Cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. Super excited to be here. Thank you very much for joining us for very first live webinar. I would like to extend a big thank you to Anna from the Dotfile team who helped prepare for all of this. And hopefully it's going to be the first of a long series of successful webinar events. So thank you very much for taking a risk on us and joining us this morning. Maybe Anna, moving on to the next slide. While we wait for others to join, a couple of important information. So first of all, this session will be recorded and we'll share the link with you afterwards. We plan to hold webinars very frequently. We plan to invite experts, to invite customers. So feel free to go on a website, register to webinars, and hopefully you'll join us for other sessions. And finally, please, let's keep this interactive. Drop your questions in the chat and I'll try to address them either as I go or at the end. Cool. So in terms of the agenda for today, I'll just start with a brief introduction of Dotfile, telling you who we are and what we do. Moving on to the topic of the day, which is challenges and opportunities in KYB. And the purpose of this webinar was really to share with you all what we learned, speaking with hundreds of fintech and helping a few scaling their KYB procedures. What are the opportunities, what are the pitfalls and the mistakes to avoid? And this is going to be followed by a live product demo that Alexandre will do. And at the end, we'll save time for Q&A, obviously. Alex, if you go to the next slide. So briefly about Dotfile. Dotfile is a RegTech startup that was founded a couple of years ago within the startup studio eFounders, which is a SaaS startup studio based in France and that has helped companies such as Spendesk and Aircall. They've been in business for 10 years. We raised about 2.5 million in capital last year in a round led by Serena. And we're working with Fintech across Europe, the UK, the US, and Israel. And at the moment, we're a team of 13 with a main office in Paris. I'm Vasco, I'm the CEO of Dotfile. And today on the call, you have also Alexandre, who is the sales lead at Dotfile, and Anna, who is managing all things marketing. Moving on to the next slide. So Dotfile is the easiest way to verify your business customers. We're a KYB, know your business orchestration platform, and we're working with fintech across payment, crypto and Web3, embedded finance, and also more traditional financial institutions, such as private equity funds and other kind of investment firms. Moving on to the next slide, Alex. What really makes us unique is that we help you run end-to-end KYB. What we noticed is that to run an effective KYB process, fintech often have to stitch together multiple vendors. They have to build internally their own system. And so that was really why we built Dotfile. We want to help you for any business you need to deal with, identify the important information, including the key officers of this business, dispatch easily data collection questionnaires to everyone, trigger AML, meaning sanctions and PEP checks on the persons that need to be verified, identity verification checks as well, compute a risk score that you fully control, where you can own the parameters and the different weights of those parameters. And finally, for the alerts and the verifications that need to be done by your analyst, dispatch this work efficiently among your team. And in order to hold this promise of performing end-to-end KYB, we've integrated in a single platform a range of data partners and third-party service providers that you can access within our case management tool and our API. And you need only a single integration, a single contract, and a single invoice. So that's in brief what we do. And let's deep dive immediately to the topic of today. So if you're on this call today, you probably agree with the fact, or at least I hope you do, that know your business procedures are kind of complex to scale. And I think there's an aggravating factor when you're a fast-growing company, a fast-growing fintech, in that you operate in multiple geographies or you have multiple products maybe that require different kind of onboarding. The complexity of it can increase exponentially. And if we really sum up what make KYB hard to scale, we have those three areas that we'll deep dive in today. First of all, the cost of running a KYB process. It's super costly to deploy. There are many vendors involved. There are lengthy developments that are required. Then it's often very manual. KYB still has a low level of automation. And the consequence of that is that you will need several analysts doing repetitive and manual tasks in order to onboard customer. The result is that the experience for your customer will not be great. You will have friction, you will have slow onboarding time, and we're in a world where people are used to instant gratification, seamless onboarding on the B2C product that they use. The expectations are now the same for B2B products. And so you owe to step up and raise to this level so you can offer the same kind of experience. So deep diving onto the first aspect, which is the cost. Speaking with a number of startups, what we found out is that for, let's say, a Series A fintech startup, running an efficient KYB program can cost upwards to 10% of the total revenue. And if we deep dive into the different drivers, so first of all, there's the development cost. And you need to find the different vendors, the different data sources, you need to build it into your back office. And what we observe is development costs that can span between 12 and 18 months. Then you have those vendors. So you need a vendor for identity verification, you need one for AML, and depending on the geography where you operate, you might need different vendors. And some of them are contract terms that are not startup friendly at all. And they will have you spend a minimum amount that might not be coherent with the stage you're at the moment. Finally, navigating the different regulation in jurisdictions can be very challenging. Same if you have multiple products. As soon as you layer different jurisdictions, different products, the complexity of the development you need to do internally increases a lot. So you can build something for your own market that works fairly well, but really the clutch moment is when you start expanding, whether it's in terms of geographies or in terms of product. And even with all those investments, no one is satisfied. There are process inefficiencies everywhere, whether that's analysts having to do manual lookups in databases when they onboard new customers, whether it's in the customer communication process. So we've heard times and times fintech, quite established fintech, telling us that they still collect documents over email, which is slow, which is not safe, and which is just not a good practice. Similarly, for reporting, we're seeing reporting, whether that's for third parties, whether that's for regulators, that are still being done on spreadsheets that are not inefficient. And most of the companies, they're data driven in a lot of ways, but when it comes to the compliance and the whole onboarding program, they're not as data driven as they are in other areas. And when you do the math and you sum all the development costs and the labor that's required and the maintenance for the system that you've developed and the contracts, you can end up with a figure that's slightly shy of 300K for the first year of maintaining your own KYB program. So that's really for the cost aspect. In the next slide, I want to address the operationally intense nature of running a KYB process. So we've said before that it's quite manual. If it's manual, it means that it's error prone. In a standard KYB process, you will have a lot of documents to handle, a lot of unstandardized documents that cannot always be verified automatically. And so you need analysts to really look at those and make a decision and assessment on whether they accept the document or not. And this is a waste of time, and this is causing a lot of errors. We often come across companies that have not really fine-tuned the way they're doing sanctions, PEP, and adverse media checks. The result of this is that you'll have a high rate of false positive. So you have your analysts that are spending a lot of time dealing with potential alerts that are actually not relevant. And the higher the number of alerts, the slower the onboarding time for your customer. You will have complex customer communication scenarios. Unfortunately, customers are not perfect. You ask a document, they provide the wrong one or they provide the right one, but it's expired. You will have back and forth, and writing separate emails each time to a customer to tell them about the right document they need to provide is widely inefficient. And you really need a way to streamline this recollection loop and this communication loop with your customer. Finally, and I think it's really a key aspect of it, is the integration with the rest of the IT systems, whether that's your product, your CRM, or your back office. All the KYB and onboarding stack cannot be on its own, and it needs to speak efficiently with the other system, with the data flowing from one to the others seamlessly. Otherwise, what we observe is that people are wasting too much time just copy-pasting information, importing CSV, and that's really a cause of inefficiencies. And so I wanted to share with you some data points that we've observed at clients before we started working with them. So on average, they spent up to 8 minutes for a single customer to review all the information and do all the tasks that went with onboarding this customer. 70% of cases involved a back and forth in communication of the customer. This clearly indicates that either the instructions were not clear, or maybe the documents expected were a bit too much. In any case, that resulted in an average customer acceptance time that was around 4 days. And so, when you see what companies can do on the B2C side, 4 days is definitely a lot. Moving on to the last part, which is really the friction and the poor UX. And I find this quote from McKinsey super interesting, and it really demonstrates the strong relationship that you can have between the quality of your onboarding experience and the retention and revenue that you can expect from your customer. So for every 1 point increase in customer onboarding satisfaction, you have a 3% uplift in customer revenue. And here I've listed some of the most common causes of frustration that we've observed. First, you have forms that are just nightmares. You have manual input, there's nothing that is pre-filled. We asked you several times the same information, and it's not properly localized. How many times we've seen companies asking documents in a geography where the document doesn't even exist in that geo, just because the form was not properly localized and the document was not identified clearly. Second, we're seeing many times companies using identity verification SDKs that are not performing well. They're not performing well on a specific set of documents or on a specific geography. And this is usually a huge cause of friction and drop-off. Similarly, having very clear instruction to guide the user at every step of the flow on which information they need to provide. Why? Because some users might be reluctant to give a personal information. So giving the appropriate context is also essential. So really not having the best instruction to guide the user at every step is usually a cause of back and forth and drop-offs as well. And finally, so we've seen everything in terms of branding and look and feel of the whole onboarding flow, from the Google form to the homemade option. But what we notice is that it does not feel most of the time a consistent experience for the user. You have an onboarding process that's different from the main product, where you really want it to be a continuum between the two. And that's really a missed opportunity not to have this kind of integrated experience between the onboarding and the product. And so I think going over those 3 points, which are the cost, the fact that it's manual, the fact that it leads to a poor user experience. You can very well imagine the competitive advantage there is in working hard on improving on those three dimensions. You can have an organization that is operationally much more efficient. You can, save engineering resources and focus on your core product, and you can drive customer satisfaction and ultimately retention. And so to conclude, what I want to do is really draw a parallel between two startups from the early stage to the pre-IPO stage. And one of them, is making suboptimal decision when it comes to their compliance processes and setup. And one of them is making the sensible decisions that ensure its long-term success. So for the startup that is not making all the right decisions, what we're seeing at the very early stage is that they're often choosing the wrong legal setup. They're choosing the wrong regulatory path. And usually, they want to go too big too soon. They will want to overinvest in their compliance setup or in their tooling even before they get traction. Another mistake that we're often seeing is startups not getting proper counseling, whether that's from a lawyer, whether that's from a consultancy. There are tons of consultancies out there that have this expertise on compliance for fintech. It would be a shame not to take advantage of their knowledge and trying to do everything on your own. And finally, we also see startups, trying to build everything in-house, or worse, hire big name vendors. So those companies do not know how to work with fintech. They do not know how to work with mid-market, and you're guaranteed to be disappointed by the collaboration with those vendors. At the growth stage, this is really where the issues start to snowball. So you're being overwhelmed by manual tasks, and the result of that is that the compliance work will be split among different teams, and not in a good way. So you will end up with the salespeople not focused 100% on selling, but they're doing some kind of document verification. They're doing some kind of KYC, or you need more analysts to do review, and you will ask the customer support team, for instance, to chime in and help on that. And there is often a will to overhaul this process. But what we're seeing is that the projects are on really the start and stop motion. So they know that they need to do something, but they never eventually get to it. And eventually, if those issues are not fixed, by the time the company is at the pre-IPO stage, what we're seeing is that they're unable to deal effectively with inquiries from the regulators. And this is where things can get pretty serious. Definitely, if you have an inquiry with the regulator, if you cannot deal with it, those mishaps will end up in the press. It will end up making headlines. There's been a ton of negative press about fintech in Europe, in France, that have been sanctioned and fined because they were not able to comply with some of the basic AML or compliance regulation that was mandated either by the FCA in the UK, by the ACPR in France, or whatever regulatory authority in the country you operate in. On the opposite side, making the right choice means having this regulatory roadmap from the get-go with a regulatory setup that really is adapted to your stage. The best companies, they start by doing things manually to really learn how to run this process in an optimal way. And the consequence is that they can spend more time building on their core offering. At the growth stage, the one thing that we think is really important is bringing in a senior compliance executive in the leadership team. Having this person will help you do two things. First, really foster company-wide this compliance culture. You want compliance to be something that is owned by everyone. Secondly, train properly the teams on these topics. And it's even more important at the later stage. So as you inch closer to IPO, it's not only having someone in your leadership team that is well versed into compliance matter that is important. You need to have your whole governance structure at the board level that inspires trust to the regulator. And you will want to have a dedicated work stream in the IPO readiness process that is fully dedicated to compliance. And at this stage, you also need to learn how to have a discussion, how to have a productive dialogue with the regulator to proactively address any potential concerns. So this is really based on our observation, and I hope that these few learnings can be helpful to some of you. I'll stop talking now, and I'll hand it over to Alex for a short product demo.
Thank you so much, Vasco. And hello, everybody. Thank you for being so many of you on the call. So I have the chance to do the product demo for you today. For the sake of clarity, we've divided the demo into two parts. So I'll start by showing you our case management platform. So it's really the back office where all the magic happens. I'm going to go on the platform. I'm going to ask a few questions to Vasco, so don't go anywhere, Vasco, to define a bit the automation that we want to put in. Then I'm going to look for a company, perform some verifications on them, and look at the results so that I'm able to take a decision fast and rapidly. On the second part of the demo, I'll show you our onboarding platform. So it's a customized branded onboarding flow where you'll see how customers can come and self-onboard with auto-filled information. So with no further ado, this is our case management platform, and it's where the collaboration between your compliance team arises. And so as you can see, you have all the cases. So what is a case for Dotfile? A case is an aggregate of a company and all the individuals related to that company. But before we dive right in, we're going to set up what we call a template. And a template is basically how we automate all of our verifications based on a set of rules. So Vasco, maybe I'll use you to make the demo a bit interactive. What kind of automation do you want to set up? So basically, we have different levels where we can apply the automation, and we can set it up on the company side. So do you want to perform AML checks automatically?
Sure. So I'll tell you what the KYB process for my company is. So I want to run an AML screening for the company itself on the business entity. We also need to collect a business registration document and the articles of association.
Perfect. Articles of association and
registration certificate. Right.
Perfect.
And
on the individual part?
So similarly, I think for the beneficial owners and the legal representative, we also want to perform AML screenings. And then we want to run an identity verification with a liveness check on all the beneficial owners. For the legal representative, we don't need to, but I want a proof of address document for each of them.
Okay. Okay, so basically what we define here is that I define all the rules that I want to put in. Identity verification and proof of liveness is exactly the one we have. And you also have the choice to have identity documents uploaded, and the verification will happen automatically as well. So I've added that in for you so that you'll see how the magic happens. I'll add a bit more stuff here, just some random documents. You have a pre-listed, a stand of default documents that we've inputted, but you can also create your custom document types. So with that in mind, I create the new template. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a case. So to celebrate France winning in Marseille, I'm going to use the biggest company in Marseille. I'm not going to input the template we just defined just now so that you see what happens. So if I create, I'm going to now add a company. And now it's super easy. So basically what I have is I choose my country. I input the name of the company. It will look automatically all the companies that match whatever I put in. Donc CMA, CGM. And all the information is pre-filled from the databases that we have. So we use several providers. And here, as you can see, the classification is here, the address is here, the tax ID as well. So now if I just click next, it pulls automatically all the list of beneficial owners and legal representative. So you see Rodolphe, Tanya, Mathilde, and so on. There's a lot for CMA. And voila, now we have a case that is fully completed. We have a company and we have individuals. The first part, so as you can see, there's no checks live. I'm going to input the template later on. Maybe the first part would be to go check the company's information. And as you see, we have basically an enhanced company profile. It's done by CreditSafe. And here you have all the information from the legal form, the credit score, the credit limit, the registration number, and you can deep dive into so much data. So here you have all the key financials. There's a lot of zeros for CMA. I chose the right company. A lot of operating profits. You can really go deep into it. In terms of credit score, it's quite interesting because you also have the credit score comments. In that case, they're really positive. It's a very profitable company, as we can see. And the credit score history. So as you can see, it's pretty good, except in June 2023. I don't know what happened at that point, but it's a reason to go deep dive. I can go check the capital structure. I can see that Yildirim owns 24% of the shares. They pay 3%, and so on, with the list of directors. In the list of directors, I can see that Monsieur Rodolphe Sade is the executive director and the main director, but I have the whole list, as well as the list of previous director. In terms of judgment, same thing again. I have all the regulatory fines, so we can see that they got fined for 221,000 euros, and all the ongoing court actions. So in that particular case, there's 1,000 of them. So maybe I'm not going to scroll until the end, but you get the idea. You also have the ones that ended and were judged. So you have a lot of information that is readily available on the platform, so that you can really get a good sense of the business that you're dealing with. But now let's perform those verifications. And as we saw, we defined the template together, and now I'm just going to apply it. And so I said it was KYB Vasco that we just created. I run it, and it's going to run all those checks in the background automatically. The good practice is to include those templates by default. But as you can see, we have for the company one need review, and we're going to deep dive on it. And for individuals, approved and one need review. Those are basically the AML checks that ran automatically. So for the company in itself, you ask for the registration certificate, the article of association, and the AML screening. So for the AML screening, you can see 23 adverse media, 4 warnings, and we can go into the details and check if they're the right, if it's a false positive or a true hit. For the company documents, we're still waiting for those documents, and I'm going to go into detail later on how we're going to actually get those documents seamlessly from our customers. On the individual part, it works the same way. So we perform the checks on all of them. We're waiting for the documents of proof of address and identity verification. On the AML screening, something quite interesting happens. We can see that Rodolphe Sade is supposedly a PEP. So I can go check if it's true. I can see the date of birth, and I can have a more granular view. And so he's actually a PEP. So I'm gonna write it as a true hit, true positive. And that brings the question: what do I want to do when something like that happens? Maybe I want to go a bit deeper into the verification. And so I'm going to apply another template, which is an enhanced customer due diligence. And if I update it, we're going to go from 2 verification for Rodolphe to 7. So now we're asking a lot of documents. This is basically our way of building preset rules that you will define for your business and your needs, depending on the risk score of the case, depending on the country. And you can basically define as many templates as you want and run them automatically, so that your verification and your business decisions are made faster. So maybe the last point here is, how do I want to get those documents from my customer? And we basically have a share portal here, which I just have to copy, and I can share to the end customer so they can upload those documents seamlessly. There's another way to do it, and we're going to see it in a minute with the onboarding flow, where they can onboard themselves and yield and get to the same result. Maybe the last part I can show you on this platform is that it's meant to be a collaborative tool between all of your teammates. And so all of your tasks are listed here with the assignee, the case status, and the check status. Does it need a review? What kind of document? And I can deep dive. And here you basically have a holistic view of all your cases about all your companies, the entity name, and also the individuals. And you'll know exactly where you're at in your processes. So we've seen how basically we can have a case management platform that fulfills all the need and verifies your businesses way faster. Now let's look a bit at how we can onboard our customers and provide a better customer experience. And so in that particular case, it's an onboarding portal that can be completely, of course, branded for your business. In that particular example, we're the Acme Bank, and we're present all around the globe, and we're present in many different languages, and we can add as many languages as you want. And the end customer, so let's say I'm Burger King, or we'll take Burger King. I'm going to onboard myself by either putting my registration number, but I don't have it written down next to me. So I'm just going to put the name of my company. It looks automatically for all the companies that match. Mine is this one. And here, once again, I don't have to do any kind of manual action. Everything is auto-filled, and I just have to check that my data is correct. So my experience as a customer is so simple and so let's say frictionless that I don't have to input anything, apart if you ask for more in-depth questions. But I just have to click next. In that particular example, we can add as many flows, questions, forms that you want, and add conditionality into it. And what happens now is that we're able to pull all the affiliated companies that are attached to my company. So as you can see, on Burger King's example, we have 4 different companies that are attached: Mazar, Vini, KPMG. For the sake of this particular example, I'm not going to keep them. I don't need to go into that much detail. I'm just going to delete them. And now the same thing happens again. I'm able to pull all the individual lists, and here I don't have to write them out all individually, and I have all the list that is pulled. I could, if we're missing one, add one myself, which is quite practical. Maybe one is missing. I'll just say that I'm Olivier. For that example, we want to perform a live verification on the applicant. So if I just put my email up, and here I accept a few terms and conditions. You can put whatever PDF you want. What happens in the background is that basically we have a single API that aggregates all the different kind of data vendors and verifications that we have. It's really powerful because this single API enables you to meet your customers where you are. You can create portals such as this one that we created, but some of our customers also want to go a bit deeper on the interactions they have with their end customers. We basically, as an example, integrated a WhatsApp chatbot a few days ago, and it's really interesting to see all the kind of use cases that derive from having a well-documented API that kind of the API that rules them all. On the other sense, internally, it's quite interesting to have a fully API product that you can integrate with your CRM. So I don't know if you use Salesforce or HubSpot, but the salespeople usually do a lot of compliance, and it's quite interesting to be able to pull all the sales data directly to your compliance software, and inversely have all the compliance information pulled into your CRM, as well as add Slack notifications and so on. So it seems like my internet crashed, or it's a tiny bit slow at the moment.
It could be because there were a lot of individuals in that case, Alexandre. So in practice, you don't need as many So you probably want to remove some of the individuals. But I think that if you go on the platform, you can already see the case being created if you refresh.
Exactly.
Yes.
Voilà. The case is here. Actually, the individuals are all listed, and the template, as we saw, was applied by default. So all the checks were done automatically. I said that was Olivier, and maybe the last part I can show you, well, but it's probably a Pep as well, is that we have this link to perform proof of liveness. It's what you wanted, Vasco, earlier. And so here the customer will receive all this information on the platform so that they can upload their documents and also perform the verification seamlessly. Voilà, that's all on my side. And so what we realized is that basically compliance is a team effort, and we need both parts. One, as you said, Vasco, is really improve the end customer experience by having a self-serve portal where people can onboard themselves the same way we're used to with B2C experiences. And on the other sense is having a centralized case management platform where you have a holistic view of your customers, but also all the automation tools to go way faster on your operations. Thank you so much for the demo, and we're open to questions now. So we have quite a few.
While we wait for others to put questions in the chat, I just want to go back very quickly to Andre's question on selecting between sanctions, PEP, adverse media. Alex, would you mind showing how we can do that from the settings section in the product?
Of course, in the verifications, AML screening, you're able to define basically what you want, and you can define if you want sanctions, fitness and probability, PEP, and adverse media. Okay. So you can define it here.
What I mentioned also to Andre in the chat is that so there are several dimensions: sanction, fitness and probability, PEP, adverse media, but we can go even further and select among the list, the exact list, which one you want. And this is being done by a customer success manager on our side. And here we've adapted a custom profile. And so that's why this option is not readily available. But basically, yes, you have this level of granularity. So Alexi asks about implementation time. How long does it take? So basically, we really adapt to your needs. We are working with teams that have very few engineering resources to dedicate to the integration. And so they need something that can be up and running very fast. And we have others that are already ready to commit to a full integration. So basically, if you use our onboarding flow, we can personalize that for you. So you don't have any tech investment to do in that aspect. And if you want to sync Dotfile data with your own back office, with your own system, we have an API that plays very well with some of the no-code tools like NA10 or Zapier or Workato or any other no-code tools you might want to use. And we have a technical account manager that can really guide you along the way. I would say that 2 weeks is a reasonable timeline for first integration, depending really on the scope of what you want to do.
So Vasco, there's other questions on the question tab. There's one question from Lucy. Is there AI embedded in the product?
Yeah, so that's something we're working on at the moment, and we'll have more to share before the end of the year. So basically, we want to take things one step further in terms of intelligent document processing and help you verify more documents automatically. And we want to help you check consistency between the documents as well. So for instance, when you have a proof of address document, when you have a business registration certificate, articles of association, in a matter of seconds, we want to help you identify whether the document really belongs to the entity that is being verified and so on, all with the goal of reducing, again, the manual task and making the verifications faster.
Amazing. And I see another question. Can you choose which provider to use?
Yes, you can. So for instance, on identity verification, we're using two different providers. One of them is Hubble, which is, helping with video verification. And the other one is Verif, a company from the UK. And the reason for having two different providers is because one product is, cheaper than the other. One works with video, the other with simple document upload. So really depending on the type of customers that you have, depending on your budget, we can find a provider that's right for you. And same for the business data. On some geographies, you'll want to select one provider instead of the others because you know or you need some of the data that this provider give. Of course, we're happy to make a recommendation on the best setup depending on your requirements. But basically, yes, you have the option to choose which data provider, which identity verification provider you're using.
Awesome. How many languages do you support in the onboarding flow? Can you pick a language that was not on the list? You want to take it, Vasco, or I do?
Yeah, so basically, this is really up to you. We can add new languages if you want, or we can provide you with a JSON file, and you just need to translate the JSON file, and we can upload it back into the platform. So internationalization is something we can do pretty well, and we can also extend that to emails. So there's a whole email automation part that we have not shown, where you can provide us with your own HTML template, your own translations, and so on. And so whenever there's a rejection, whenever a case is accepted, you might want to trigger email notification, and we can help you do that as well.
Right.
I'm seeing another question about the contract. So can I bring my own contract if I already have an established relationship with the provider? So the answer is yes. So for instance, we are using Comply Advantage for AML verification. And that's part of the convenience of using Dotfile. You have a single contract, a single integration. But let's say that you have a pre-existing relationship with one of those providers. You can just enter your credentials, and any verifications that you're doing through this provider is going to go through your own contract and not ours. Obviously, we have interesting rates because we buy in bulk, but if for some reason you prefer to use your provider, that's also an option. All right. I see that we approached the 45 minutes mark. So last chance to ask question. And otherwise, I really want to thank you again for joining us this morning. We'll send you an email afterwards with the recording if there are some stuff that you want to look up. And feel free to visit our website. We have a pretty extensive API and product documentation with other video demos that might be helpful. And hopefully, if you think that you can find interest in the solution, we're also available to help. Happy to just go over your processes and provide guidance on what we've seen working well with our other customers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you also, Anna, for a great session. Bye-bye.